The Galactic Academy's survival exam had a reputation, not a good one. More like the kind of reputation that makes students update their emergency contact information and write heartfelt letters to loved ones. Planet Krell 7 was specifically chosen because everything there wanted to eat you. And the things that didn't want to eat you wanted to poison you. And the things that didn't want to poison you were poisonous anyway, just for fun. Proctor Kixtal stood in the orbital station's briefing room, all four of his eyes gleaming with what could only be described as bureaucratic satisfaction. He loved this part. The fear, the desperate bravado, the inevitable realization that 72 hours was a very long time when you were being hunted. "Welcome, students, to your final examination," he announced, mandibles clicking together in what his species considered a smile. Humans would have called it nightmare fuel. "You will be dropped into separate zones of Krell 7 with a basic survival kit. Your objective is simple. Do not die." In the front row, Throck of the Craner Empire cracked his knuckles. All 6 of them. His species had evolved on a heavy-gravity death world, and he had the muscle mass to prove it. He was not worried. 3 seats over, Lissa coiled her tail beneath her seat. Her people were ambush hunters, patient and precise. She had trained her entire life for this. She was not worried either. In the back corner, Pip hovered approximately 3 feet off the ground, their enlarged cranium pulsing with thought. Their species had colonized 12 star systems through pure intellectual superiority. Pip had calculated the optimal survival strategy down to the calorie. Definitely not worried. And then there was Jake Reeves. Human. Engineering major. Currently picking his teeth with what appeared to be a disassembled pen. "Mr. Reeves," Chixtal said, 2 eyes swiveling to focus on the human while the other 2 watched the rest of the class. "Do you have any questions?" Jake looked up, grinned, and said, "Yeah. Is there a weight limit on what we can build while we're down there? Or is it more of a size restriction situation?" Chixtal's mandibles stopped clicking. "You are aware this is a survival exam, not a construction project." Right, survive, got it. "But if I survive really well and I have some spare time, can I—" "You will not have spare time, Mr. Reeves. You will be too busy not dying." Cool. Just wanted to clarify." Jake went back to his pen, now somehow turning it into a tiny catapult. Chixtal made a note in his datapad. He had proctored 17 species through this exam. Humans were new to the Galactic Academy, and their file was, frankly, concerning. They had apparently survived their own planet's apocalypse-level events multiple times, mostly by accident. But this exam had broken warriors and scholars alike. Surely one scrawny human with a smart mouth would be humbled. Surely. 2 hours later, 4 drop pods launched toward Krell 7's surface, each aimed at a different biome. Each student had an emergency beacon, 3 days of rations, a basic med kit, a knife, and a fire starter. Standard issue. Impossible to MacGyver into anything useful, Chixtal had thought. The drop pods hit atmosphere, and 4 vital sign monitors activated on his console, displaying heart rates, stress levels, and location data. Throck's pod landed in a volcanic zone. His heart rate remained steady. Excellent. Lissa touched down in a dense jungle, her stress levels barely registered. Perfect. Pip's pod settled into a canyon system. Optimal cognitive function detected. As expected, Jake's pod slammed into a rocky wasteland, and his heart rate spiked. Chixtal leaned forward. Here it comes. The panic. The realization. The heart rate normalized, then dropped below baseline. Jake's voice crackled over the comm system, which was supposed to be emergency only. "Hey, Proctor Q. Quick question. This emergency beacon runs on a thermal battery, right?" "Mr. Reeves, that channel is for emergencies only." "Right, but does it?" Chixtal sighed, a sound like grinding rocks. "Yes. Sick. Thanks." The comm went silent. Chixtal stared at the monitor. Surely the human wasn't about to. The emergency beacon's signal vanished from Jake's vital display. He had disassembled his only method of emergency extraction. In the first 20 minutes, Chixtal put his head in his hands. This was going to be a long 72 hours. Hour 3 found Throck constructing a shelter from volcanic rocks, carefully rationing his water supply, and maintaining a defensive perimeter. Textbook survival tactics. Chixtal noted it with approval. Hour 4 showed Lissa weaving camouflage from jungle vines, setting snares for small prey, and purifying water through a solar still. Elegant. Efficient. Exactly what the exam was designed to test. Hour 5 revealed Pip calculating the precise caloric expenditure of every movement, having already established a shelter in a defensible cave and begun cataloging edible fungi. The tiny genius was, predictably, acing this. Hour 6 showed Jake elbow deep in his disassembled emergency beacon, surrounded by rocks he had arranged by mineral content. Talking to himself. Okay, so if I can get the thermal cell to run hotter, and I use these iron-rich stones as a makeshift crucible, I should be able to hit at least 1500 degrees. That's not steel melting hot, but it's definitely copper working hot. And honestly, copper is underrated. Chixtal zoomed in the monitor. What is he doing? His assistant, a floating jellyfish creature named Bloop, pulsed uncertainly. It appears he is building something, Proctor. But what could he possibly build from rocks and a beacon? They watched in silence as Jake created what could only be described as a primitive forge, using his belt buckle as a hammer, several carefully arranged stones as an air channel, and the thermal battery as a heat source that would make metallurgists weep. This is not normal survival behavior, Chixtal muttered. Hour 8. Jake had successfully smelted a copper-like metal from the local rocks, and was in the process of hammering it into a crude but functional blade. He was also singing something about being on a highway to a danger zone, which Chixtal's translator couldn't quite parse. That's when Kevin showed up. The vital monitor shrieked an alert. Predator encounter. Krell 7, Hex Wolf. 200 pounds of muscle. 6 legs for optimal pouncing. Teeth designed by evolution's cruelest committee. Chixtal leaned forward. Here it was. Reality. The moment the human would realize this wasn't a game. Jake looked up from his forge, saw the Hex Wolf, and said, "Oh hey buddy. You are adorable." "Yes you are. Who's a terrifying apex predator?" "You are." The Hex Wolf growled, beginning its hunting circle. "Okay, so you're gonna try to flank me, get me running, then hit me from behind when I'm tired. Classic pursuit predator tactics. Respect." Jake stood up, stretching. "But here's the thing, Kevin, yeah, I'm calling you Kevin, deal with it. I'm actually really tired of squatting by this forge. So how about we skip to the part where you realize I'm not food?" Kevin lunged. Jake didn't run. Instead, he grabbed a piece of meat from his rations, lit it on fire with his forge, and whipped it at Kevin's face. The Hexwolf yelped, startled by the flaming projectile, and skidded to a halt. "Yeah, that's fire, Kevin. You know what fire is? It's me being higher on the food chain than you. But I'm not gonna hold it against you because look at those eyes. You're just a big puppy, aren't you?" What happened next would be debated in xenobiology circles for years. Jake set up an elaborate trap using vines, his newly forged copper wire, and what appeared to be a spring-loaded mechanism built from his pod's seat cushion. When Kevin charged again, he triggered the trap and ended up hanging upside down, all 6 legs tangled, looking deeply embarrassed. "There we go. Time out for Kevin." Jake approached with another piece of jerky. "Now, I'm gonna let you down, but we're gonna have a conversation about boundaries and not eating people, okay?" He fed the Hexwolf. Kevin made a confused chirping sound. Jake scratched behind what might have been Kevin's ears. Kevin's tail started wagging. "All 3 of them. Good boy. Yes, you are. You're gonna be my apocalypse dog now, aren't you?" Up in orbit, Chixtal's mandibles hung open. All 4 eyes were locked on the screen. Blue pulsed a question mark pattern. "I don't know," Chixtal whispered. "I have no idea what I'm watching." Hour 12. Throck had successfully hunted a small creature and was roasting it carefully, maintaining his energy levels. Lissa had expanded her shelter and was meditating to conserve calories. Pip had created a detailed map of the surrounding area and calculated the optimal foraging route. Jake had a pet hexwolf sleeping next to his forge while he worked on upgrading his copper blade into something that looked suspiciously like a functional axe. "Kevin, I'm just saying, if I'd known this exam was gonna be this chill, I would have brought a deck of cards or something. This is day 1 and I'm already running out of projects." Kevin snored, a sound like rocks in a tumbler. Chixtal pulled up Jake's file again, searching for any explanation. Under special notes, there was a single line from his homeworld's recommendation. "Jake will either solve your problem or become your problem. Possibly both." The proctor was beginning to understand. Hour 15 brought the first emergency extraction. A student from Sector 7, a reptilian species known for their resilience, had encountered a swarm of acid-spitting insects and made the wise decision that passing the exam wasn't worth dissolved flesh. Chixtal approved the extraction without judgment. Survival meant knowing when to quit. Hour 18 brought another. Throck, the mighty Cranor warrior, had been cornered by a pack of hexwolves. Kevin's cousins, presumably, and after a valiant fight that left him exhausted and bleeding from multiple lacerations, he hit his emergency beacon. When the extraction team brought him up, Throck looked at the monitor showing Jake's camp and went very still. "Is that a forge?" "Yes," Chixtal said tiredly. Did he befriend a hexwolf? Yes. Is he wearing armor made from his supply kit? Chixtal looked closer at the screen. Sure enough, Jake had fashioned chest protection from the metallic survival blanket, reinforced with copper plates. Apparently yes. Throck sat down heavily. I would like to file a complaint. This exam is unfair. The exam is the same for everyone. That human is not taking the same exam as the rest of us. Chixtal couldn't argue with that. Hour 22. Jake had progressed from basic metallurgy to what could only be described as a fully functional primitive forge, complete with a bellows system made from his empty ration bags and a clever pulley arrangement. Okay, Kevin, I know you don't understand engineering, but this is genuinely cool. See, I'm using the thermal differential between the day and night temperatures to create a passive cooling system, which means I can work the metal longer without it getting brittle. It's basically ancient technology. But ancient technology worked, you know? Kevin yawned, showing approximately 900 teeth. You're right, I'm boring you. Let's take a walk, stretch our legs. All 6 of yours. Both of mine. They went on a walk. This turned out to be a mistake, but not for Jake. The creature that ambushed them was called, in the academic literature, a Krell 7 arachnoscorpy. In practical terms, it was a spider the size of a motorcycle with a scorpion tail and the disposition of a rejected loan application. It dropped from an overhang, directly onto Kevin, clearly viewing the hexwolf as an easy meal. Jake reacted on pure instinct. Hey, bad Barbara, we don't eat friends. He charged the arachnoscorpy, which he had apparently named Barbara in the 3 seconds since meeting it with his newly forged spear, a weapon that had no business being as well balanced as it was. The fight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Barbara tried to sting him. Jake dodged, rolled, and jabbed the spear into the joint of one leg. Barbara screeched and backed off Kevin, who scrambled upright and immediately moved to Jake's side. That's right, we're a team now, Barbara. You want Kevin, you go through me, and I've got a pointy stick and absolutely no sense of self-preservation. Barbara circled, evaluating. Jake stood his ground, spear ready, Kevin growling beside him, and then Jake did something that made Chixtal's translator glitch out entirely. He lowered the spear slightly and pulled out another piece of jerky. Or, Jake said conversationally, and hear me out here. You could not try to eat my dog, and instead I could share my food, and we could all be friends. I'm just saying, cooperation beats competition in survival scenarios. It's basic game theory. He tossed the jerky halfway between them. Barbara's multiple eyes tracked the food. That's right, free food. No fighting required. You know how much energy you just burned trying to eat Kevin? Way more than that jerky's worth. This is a better deal. Barbara edged forward, grabbed the jerky, and retreated. Good. Now we're negotiating. I've got more food. You've got those terrifying murder mittens that could probably help me with some projects. Symbiotic relationship. Everybody wins. It took another 20 minutes and 3 more pieces of jerky, but by hour 23, Barbara was cautiously accepting head pats and had stopped trying to sting anyone. Up in orbit, Chixtal called an emergency meeting with the other exam proctors. Is this normal for humans? He asked the assembled aliens. Proctor Venn, who had overseen human students in other courses, tentacles writhing with what might have been amusement, said, Define normal. Do they regularly befriend hostile fauna during survival situations? I once watched a human convince a sentient carnivorous plant to become vegetarian through a series of philosophical arguments and snack offerings. That's not an answer. That's because there is no answer with humans. They're either going to die heroically or befriend everything trying to kill them. Sometimes both. Chixtal looked at his monitor. Jake was now teaching Kevin and Barbara to play a game that involved fetching sticks. Barbara was surprisingly good at it. How much longer? He asked weakly. 50 hours. Bloop pulsed helpfully. I need a drink, Chixtal muttered. Then, remembering he was a professional. I need to monitor the exam more closely. Hour 36. Lissa sent her distress signal after a regular Krell 7 predator, not one of Jake's new friends, had gotten past her defenses and destroyed her water supply. She was extracted, tired, dehydrated, but alive. On the extraction shuttle, she saw the monitor feed of Jake's camp. Is that a smoking rack? Don't ask, the medic told her. Jake had indeed constructed a fish smoking operation. He had also built a primitive water filtration system, and a hammock, and what appeared to be a crude game of chess using rocks. Kevin and Barbara were lying on either side of him, looking like the world's most dangerous therapy animals. I demand a recount, Lissa said. That human is not surviving. He's thriving. Yes, the medic agreed. We've noticed. Hour 37 found Pip, the genius, staring at their own calculations and slowly realizing that the exam wasn't testing survival skills. It was testing stress management and adaptability under pressure. Pip had optimized everything and was absolutely miserable. They hit their beacon voluntarily. This exam is philosophically flawed, Pip announced upon extraction. It measures tolerance for discomfort, not actual survival capability. Did you see the humans' camp? Someone asked. I refuse to acknowledge that data point. It's clearly an outlier and should be removed from any serious analysis. Back on Krell 7, Jake was taking a nap in his hammock while Kevin and Barbara kept watch. You know what, guys? He said sleepily. This is pretty nice. I might actually miss this when it's over. Chixtal heard this through the monitor and made a noise like a garbage disposal eating cutlery. 50 hours to go. Hour 40 found Jake experiencing something no previous exam participant had ever reported. Genuine boredom. Okay, so we've got shelter. Check. Water filtration. Check. Food supply. Check. Defense perimeter. Check thanks to Kevin and Barbara. Fire. Obviously. Check. He looked around his camp, which now resembled less of a survival situation and more of a primitive resort. What do people even do with free time? This is why I always have projects. Kevin made a curious chirping sound. You're right, I should probably reinforce the forge structure. The support beam looks a little wobbly. Barbara clicked her mandibles in what Jake had learned meant agreement or possibly hunger. It was hard to tell. He was halfway through the reinforcement project when the ground started shaking. Oh good, Jake said, perking up. An event. I was starting to think this planet was getting soft. What emerged from the rocky terrain was what the scientific community called a Megatherium rex. What Jake saw was a bear crossed with a lizard, crossed with a tank, crossed with a really bad attitude. It was approximately 12 feet tall and looked like it could eat a hexwolf for breakfast and an arachnoscorpy for dessert. Kevin immediately went into defensive posture, hackles raised. Barbara positioned herself between Jake and the creature, stinger ready. The Megatherium rex roared, a sound that made nearby rocks vibrate. Jake evaluated the situation with the careful consideration of someone who had already befriended 2 apex predators and was starting to see a pattern. Hey there, big guy. You look hungry. I'm Jake. This is Kevin. That's Barbara. We've got smoked fish if you're interested in not eating us. The creature paused, nostrils flaring. Up in orbit, Chixtal was standing now, all 4 eyes locked on the screen. No, he cannot possibly. Jake pulled out a large piece of smoked fish from his storage rack and held it up. Look, I get it. You're at the top of the food chain. Very impressive. But I've got fire, tools, and 2 friends who are surprisingly good at teamwork. And this is just a suggestion, you could try the fish. I smoked it myself. It's actually pretty good. He tossed the fish halfway between them. The Megatherium rex, which had never encountered an offering of food from prey before, looked confused. This was not how the food chain worked. Food ran. Food screamed. Food did not offer snacks. That's right, Reginald, yeah. You're Reginald, now take a bite. Free sample. He named it, Chixtal whispered. He's been in its presence for 45 seconds and he's already named it. Reginald lowered his massive head and sniffed the fish. Then, with surprising delicacy for a creature that could crush boulders, he ate it. Jake grinned. Good, right? I've got more. You want to hang out? We've got a nice camp here. Very low-stress environment. 20 minutes later, Reginald was lying down near the forge, accepting fish and looking like the universe's most dangerous puppy. Kevin had cautiously approached and sniffed Reginald, establishing some kind of pack hierarchy that put Jake at the top through sheer force of personality. Barbara was less trusting but had stopped actively threatening the newcomer, which Jake counted as progress. This is my life now, Chixtal said to no one in particular. I proctor an exam where a human builds a forge and starts a petting zoo of lethal predators. To be fair, Bloop pulsed, it is quite impressive. That's not the point of the exam. Hour 48. With his basic needs met and his defense situation upgraded to small army of apex predators, Jake did what any engineering student would do with free time. He started a recreational construction project. Okay, team. We're building a bridge across that ravine because I want to see what's on the other side and I'm tired of walking around. Kevin, you're on rock collection duty. Barbara, you've got those leg things that are great for precision work, so you're helping me with the support cables. Reginald, you're basically a crane, so you're lifting heavy stuff. Chixtal watched in horrified fascination as the human organized his predator crew into a construction team. The bridge took 6 hours. It shouldn't have been possible. It worked perfectly. You know what this needs? Jake said, standing back to admire his work. Aesthetic touches, maybe some decorative elements. Do you think I could carve the support posts? Reginald made a sound that might have been agreement or indigestion. Hour 54. The last remaining student besides Jake, a crystalline entity from Sector 9, tapped out after realizing they were losing structural cohesion from stress. Perfectly reasonable. The exam was designed to push students to their limits. As they were extracted, they asked to see Jake's feed. They watched for 30 seconds. Is he teaching them tricks? Jake was indeed teaching his 3 predators to respond to hand signals. Kevin could sit, stay, and fetch. Barbara could climb on command and was learning to manipulate objects with surprising dexterity. Reginald could rear up, which was terrifying, or lie down, which was slightly less terrifying. I hate this exam, the crystalline entity said. I formally hate this exam and I want it noted in my file. Hour 58. Jake had run out of practical projects and had moved on to entertainment. He'd built a primitive hammock using vines and his surplus paracord. He'd carved a set of dice from stone. He'd even attempted to teach Kevin and Barbara a simplified version of poker, though this was going poorly because neither of them had hands. Okay, new rule. Tail wags count as raising. Mandible clicks count as folding. This is basically legitimate gambling. Up in orbit. Chickstall was writing his incident report. Student Jake Reeves, he dictated, has successfully survived the 72-hour examination period with, and I cannot stress this enough, excessive competence. He has befriended 3 separate apex predators, constructed functional tools and shelter beyond the scope of expected outcomes, and is currently experiencing what appears to be recreational boredom. He paused. I would like to formally request that humans be given a separate examination protocol in future semesters because this is absolutely ridiculous. Hour 60. Jake was napping. Kevin, Barbara, and Reginald formed a protective circle around him. His vital signs showed he was healthier than when he'd started the exam. His stress levels were lower. His heart rate variability suggested he was in better physical condition. Chickstall pulled up the medical data again, certain there was an error. There was no error. The human had treated a survival exam like a vacation and somehow come out improved. 12 hours left, Bloop pulsed. I'm aware, Chickstall said grimly. At this rate he's going to ask for a time extension. He had no idea how right he was. Hour 61 brought what Chickstall had been dreading. The final stretch. This was typically when students were at their most desperate, running on fumes, barely holding together, counting down the seconds until extraction. This was when the exam truly tested character and resilience. Jake woke up from his nap refreshed, stretched, and said to his 3 companions, "You know what? I'm gonna miss you guys. This has been genuinely fun." Kevin's tail wagged enthusiastically. Barbara clicked her mandibles in what Jake had decided was affection. Reginald made a low rumbling sound that shook pebbles loose. Let's make the last few hours count. I'm thinking we should organize the camp, maybe create a little guest book situation for the next poor student who lands here. Really set them up for success. Chickstall felt something inside him break. It might have been his professional dignity. Hour 65. Jake had carved a welcome sign from a flat stone that read, Jake's Camp. If you're reading this, the water system is to your left. Forge is operational. Food storage is marked. The locals are friendly if you offer snacks. Good luck. P.S. Kevin likes belly rubs. He'd also left detailed instructions on maintaining the forge, operating the water filtration system, and which local plants were edible versus poisonous. There, he said, satisfied. Paying it forward. That's what you do when you've got a good thing going. Hour 68. The extraction window opened. Chickstall, all 4 eyes bloodshot from 70 hours of monitoring the most confusing exam in Academy history, initiated the descent protocol. His shuttle broke atmosphere and headed toward Jake's coordinates. What he saw as he approached made him question his entire career. Jake's camp wasn't just a survival shelter, it was a thriving outpost. The forge was still burning. The water system was functioning with automated efficiency. The smoking rack was full. The bridge stood proudly across the ravine, and 3 of Krell 7's most dangerous predators were lounging around like they were at a spa. Jake was wearing armor he'd crafted himself, held tools that shouldn't have been possible to create, and was waving cheerfully at the descending shuttle. When Chickstall emerged, he found himself face to face with a human who looked better than he had at the start of the exam. Hey, Proctor Q. Good timing. I was just about to start working on a water wheel. You ever seen a water wheel? Fascinating technology. Chickstall's mandibles worked silently for a moment. Mr. Reeves, the examination period is complete. Oh, right. Yeah. Jake looked around at his camp, his 3 predator friends, his various construction projects. You know, I've got to say, this was actually pretty great. Really relaxing. Good change of pace from exams. Relaxing. Yeah, fresh air, good exercise, made some friends. Therapeutic, really. He gestured at Kevin, Barbara, and Reginald. These guys are the best. Can I bring them back with me? Absolutely not. Not even Kevin? Look at that face. How can you say no to that face? Kevin looked up at Kixtal with 6 eyes full of what might have been hope or hunger. Possibly both. The fauna remains on planet. Jake's shoulders slumped. That's fair, I guess. You guys are wild animals. Well, semi-wild. Domesticated adjacent? Huh? He knelt down, addressing his 3 companions. Okay, team, this is where we part ways. You've been amazing. Kevin, keep protecting your territory. Barbara, you're in charge of the forge now, don't let it go out. Reginald, try not to eat anyone unless they're really rude. Chixtal pulled up his medical scanner, certain that Jake must be experiencing some kind of stress-induced delusion. The scanner showed perfect health. Better than perfect health. Muscle development improved. Stress hormones at optimal levels. Vitamin D elevated from sun exposure. Minor cuts and bruises completely healed. This is impossible, Chixtal muttered. What is? You are healthier now than when you started. Jake shrugged. Yeah, I got plenty of sleep, good food, lots of fresh air and exercise. Plus I got to work with my hands, which is always good for mental health. Why wouldn't I be healthier? Because you were taking a survival exam on a death world. Oh, was that what this was? I thought it was more of a wilderness retreat situation. Jake grinned. Did I pass? Chixtal looked at the camp, the tamed predators, the functional infrastructure, the humans standing there like he'd just finished a pleasant vacation. Yes, Mr. Reeves, you passed. Awesome. Hey, quick question. Is there extra credit available? Because I've got some ideas for improvements to the forge design, and I noticed there's a geothermal vent about 3 clicks north that could be harnessed for. No extra credit. The exam is over. We are leaving now. Jake gave his 3 friends a final pat, picked up his pack which he'd somehow improved with additional pockets and support straps and headed toward the shuttle. He paused at the entrance and looked back at Krell 7's landscape. You know what, Proctor? This was genuinely one of the best experiences I've had at the Academy. If you ever need someone to test out new exam planets, I'm totally available. This was fun. Chixtal made a noise like grinding metal. As the shuttle lifted off, Jake pressed his face against the window, waving at Kevin, Barbara, and Reginald, who watched their human friend disappear into the sky. Do you think they'll be okay? Jake asked. They are apex predators on a death world. They will be fine. Yeah, but emotionally okay? Because we bonded. That was real. Chixtal pulled up the extraction footage for the other students. Throck, wounded and exhausted. Lissa, dehydrated and defeated. Pip, philosophically disillusioned. The crystalline entity, structurally compromised. Then he looked at Jake, who was already sketching improvement plans for the survival kit in a notebook he'd apparently made from plant fibers. Mr. Reeves, how did you do this? Jake looked up, genuinely confused. Do what? Survive. Thrive. Befriend multiple lethal creatures. Build functional infrastructure. Treat a survival exam like a recreational activity. Jake thought about it for a moment. I just did what humans do. We see a problem. We solve it. We see something scary. We try to understand it. We get bored. We build stuff. It's not that complicated. You built a forge. Yeah, forges are easy once you understand thermodynamics. You domesticated a hexwolf. Kevin was just lonely. Everyone wants friends. You constructed a bridge. The ravine was annoying. Chixtal sat back in his seat, all 4 eyes closing briefly. I need to file 17 separate reports about this exam. Cool. Can you mention Kevin in the report? He really was the MVP. As they ascended toward the Academy station, Chixtal looked at his datapad and began updating the exam protocols. New Rule 1. Humans are no longer permitted to disassemble their emergency beacons. New Rule 2. Befriending hostile fauna is prohibited. New Rule 3. Construction of industrial equipment is not within the scope of survival examination. New Rule 4. Improving the planet's infrastructure is explicitly forbidden. He kept typing, each rule more specific and absurd than the last, all because one human had decided that surviving wasn't enough. Jake hummed contentedly, already planning what he'd do on the next exam. The footage went viral. Within 48 hours of Jake's extraction, every student at the Galactic Academy had seen the highlights. Jake building a forge. Jake befriending Kevin. Jake teaching Barbara to play fetch. Jake organizing Reginald into a construction crew. Jake napping peacefully while surrounded by apex predators. The student forums exploded. "That's not how you survive. That's how you colonize." One post read. "I watched my roommate nearly die on that planet and this human built a vacation home," complained another. "Kevin deserved better than to be left behind," argued a third, which somehow became the most popular take. Throck refused to watch the footage. "That human cheated," he insisted to anyone who would listen. "There is no way that was a standard examination. He had the same supplies as you," someone pointed out. "He had human nonsense. That's not a supply, that's a superpower." The Academy administration held an emergency meeting. Dean Zornak, a crystalline entity who had overseen the institution for 2 centuries, reviewed the exam footage with growing concern. "This student received a perfect score." "Yes," Chixtal confirmed. "He befriended 3 separate apex predators." "Yes." "He built functional infrastructure that improved the planet's habitability." "Yes." "And he asked for extra credit." "Yes," Chixtal said, all 4 eyes twitching. Dean Zornak was silent for a long moment. "We need new rules. I have drafted 47 of them. Make it an even 50. The new examination protocols were implemented immediately. Rule 38. Students may not disassemble emergency equipment for any purpose, including but not limited to construction projects, scientific experiments, art installations, or what humans call seeing what's inside. Rule 39. Befriending hostile fauna is strictly prohibited. This includes but is not limited to naming them, feeding them, teaching them tricks, organizing them into work crews, or forming emotional attachments. Rule 40. Students must not improve the examination planet's infrastructure. No forges, bridges, water systems, or welcome signs for future students. Rule 41. The examination is a test of survival, not of thriving. Students who appear to be enjoying themselves will be subject to additional scrutiny. Rule 42. Humans specifically are reminded that the goal is to survive, not to optimize, befriend, or renovate. The list continued. Jake, meanwhile, became something of a celebrity on campus. Students stopped him in hallways asking for survival tips. His engineering professors asked him to guest lecture on resource optimization. The xenobiology department wanted to interview him about interspecies communication. He mostly just wanted to talk about Kevin. He was such a good boy, Jake told anyone who would listen. Best hexwolf on Krell 7. Probably best hexwolf anywhere. 3 weeks after the exam, Jake received a message on his datapad. It was from Proctor Chixtal. "Mr. Reeves, I am contacting you regarding next semester's survival examination. Due to the new protocols implemented after your, shall we say, exceptional performance, you have been selected for a different examination site. Planet Vulcar 5. Volcanic environment. Extreme temperatures. Toxic atmosphere. No fauna. Please confirm your participation." Jake read the message twice. No fauna meant nothing to befriend. Volcanic environment meant lots of heat for metallurgy. Toxic atmosphere meant he'd need to build better filtration systems. He was grinning as he typed his response. "Sounds perfect. I'm in." Chixtal received the confirmation and immediately forwarded it to the new exam proctor for Vulcar 5. A stoic being named Corval, who had overseen successful examinations for 15 years without incident. He attached a single note. "Good luck. You'll need it." Corval read Jake's file. 1 human, engineering student. Unremarkable background. The note about the previous exam just said, "See attached footage." Corval didn't watch the footage. How bad could one student be? Examination day arrived. Jake's pod launched toward Vulcar 5. Corval monitored the descent with professional calm. "Student Reeves, you have 72 hours to survive in a hostile volcanic environment. Your supplies are limited. Your emergency beacon is your only lifeline. Do you understand?" "Crystal clear, Proctor." "Hey, quick question though. That volcanic activity, is it active lava flows, or more like geothermal vents?" "Primarily geothermal vents with occasional lava flows." "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason, just planning ahead." The pod landed. Corval watched Jake exit, survey the landscape of volcanic rock and sulfurous vents, and smile. "This is gonna be great," Jake said to himself. "I wonder if I can use the geothermal energy to power a kiln. Actually, you know what, I bet I could create a passive cooling system using the temperature differential between the vent zones and the shadow regions. This is basically free energy everywhere." 30 minutes later, Jake's emergency beacon signal vanished. Corval pulled up the video feed just in time to see Jake elbow deep in the disassembled beacon, using components to build what appeared to be a temperature gauge. "Oh no," Corval whispered. Back in his office, Chixtal received an urgent message from Korval. It was just 2 words. I understand. Chixtal poured himself a drink, the one he'd denied himself during Jake's first exam, and raised it toward the ceiling in a sardonic toast. To humanity, he said. The species that looked at survival and said, not good enough. On Volcar 5, Jake was already sketching plans for what he was calling a basic geothermal workshop and wondering if volcanic glass could be shaped into useful tools. He had 71 hours and 30 minutes left. He was going to need a bigger project list.